Social housing now! Social housing now! Social housing now! Social housing now! That's one thing that we want. The second thing that we want is pass the Community Land Act now! Pass the Community Land Act now! Pass the Community Land Act now! Social Community Land Act now! That's what, give yourselves a hand clap. So we are definitely going to get this started. We just have to get started with our chants. Social housing now and pass the Community Land Act now. Today is a great day. I say today's a great day for community wealth building. Today is a great day for economic justice building. And it's so great to be a part of our dynamic advocates of New York City. So let me just get everything out the way right now before I bring out the dynamic council member Sanchez. We are here today to push for a new way of dealing with land in New York City. For far too long, profit has guided the development of our communities. That's right, say it louder. Pushing out our neighbors and creating the housing crisis we see today. Roll back the curtains. Your neighbors are no longer your neighbors. They're just simply investors. But it doesn't have to be this way. We don't need luxury condos. We do not need housing that enriches a few. We need a new way. We need a new way, as just being demonstrated. We are fighting for the Community Land Act, for social housing that is deeply affordable and controlled by us, community, that will support the creation of community wealth building and serve the common good. The Community Land Act and other bills heard today will provide new tools so that nonprofit developers and community land trusts will be able to acquire property and remove it from the cycle of speculation. So I'm going to ask a question for my dynamic advocates. What do we need? Social housing! What do we need? Social housing now! When do we need it? Now! When do we need it? Now! I now turn this portion over to our dynamic council member, Sanchez. Give her a hand clap.
Thank you. I'm little, so I'm gonna do that. No, let's give a round of applause for Mr. Albert Scott. Of course, I literally just closed my speech, so you're gonna have to see me log into my computer. Oh no. Well, in the meantime, can you give me some chance while I log back in?
It will be my pleasure. Because you know I'm very shy. What do we need? Social housing. When do we need it? Now. When do we need it? Now. When do we need it? Now. What do we need? Social housing. You know it. And then I just need everyone to take in the dynamic optics from our dynamic advocates and see the verbiage, the non-verbal technically communication that's being displayed. Pass the Community Land Act. Social housing now. This is all about community wealth building. And now I turn it over to Councilmember Zinn. Thank you.
So when I say housing is a, you say human right. Housing is a
Human right.
Housing is a
Human right.
Housing is a
Human right.
That's right, and that's why we are here today. Good afternoon. I have been waiting for this moment since I began my quest to run for office. This is a historic moment because you have folks coming together who truly want to fight for those New Yorkers, for those Americans. We're setting the stage, baby. We're setting a model. We want to fight for a country and for a city that responds to those who need the most close from us. I want to thank Comptroller Brad Lander for your leadership on social housing. I want to thank my colleagues who are here, Councilmember Nurse, Councilmember Ressler, Councilmember Brewer, the Office of Congresswoman Nydia Velasquez. And we also want to thank our advocates, and I'm going to pass it over for you to thank our advocates for being here today.
Yes, we'd like to definitely thank our dynamic advocate from East Harlem, El Barrio Community Land Trust. Our dynamic group from Northwest Bronx Church and Community Coalition. And definitely our dynamic supportive group, ANHD. And of course, our dynamic group, Housing Justice for All.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So as some may know, this conversation has been long in the making. New York City and municipalities truly across our great nation are facing a dire housing crisis. It is not, and let me say that with so much force, it is not one that is felt equally by all New Yorkers or all those who call America home, but one with pain concentrated in communities of low income, in communities of color, and one that is felt by underrepresented people like persons living with disabilities, sexual and gender minorities, religious minorities, and others that feel it the most. And that this pain is felt differentially is widely documented. It's a function of the history of our great nation. Government and private sector policies like redlining that devalued certain communities because they housed people of color.
Speak about it.
Shout out to my council member Rita Joseph. Thank you for joining. Investments like the GI Bill and favorable mortgage policies that get this, invested more than $1 trillion in largely white families, excluded communities of color. And here we are today. I hear people talking about our inability as a nation, as a city, to solve the housing crisis because it's too expensive. Well, you know what else is crazy? Educating every single school child with free buildings, free books, teachers that we pay for.
Crazy.
That is insane. How can we pay for all of that? We have a social compact. That social compact is to uplift those that are the most vulnerable among us. And that is the policy and the paradigm that we're here to talk about with so much love and so much excitement today. We have a president of the United States who has released a housing supply plan. Okay, all right, let's build more housing. Yes, the governor's housing compact to build 800,000 units of housing across the state of New York. Well, for who? And how? And how is that going to make a difference? How are we going to change the dynamics that have been hurting and keeping feet and knees on people's necks? How are we going to change those paradigms with these investments? We have a mayor who has also put forth a housing agenda. Let's reduce red tape, says the housing blueprint. Let's reduce the barriers to building, says City of Yes. Okay, all right, yeah, let's do that. But how are we going to do it? And that is what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about a new paradigm, a different way of doing things, of uplifting social housing. And so let's look at the city's assets in positive lights, in a positive light. We have, it's a bad thing, but let's turn it into a good thing. We have 15,000 units, 15,000 parcels of land in this city that are underutilized, that are largely vacant. We have over-leveraged properties because speculators have bought and bought and bought and leveraged and taken on debt, and that debt has come to cripple the backs of the New Yorkers who need it the most. But let's look at these negatives as positives, and let's see how we can turn those into opportunities for social housing. I am so thankful that it's not just me, it's not just the controller, it is a movement.
That's right.
It is a movement, it paradigm. Today we have a package of legislation that is geared toward making this a reality, a land bank, prioritizing land trust, prioritizing mission-driven development, prioritizing community organizations. All of this we are putting into place to put communities at the forefront. So with that, I will begin the speaking program with our colleagues, but you know me, we gotta fight, because housing is a
Human right!
Housing is a
Human right!
Housing is a
Human right!
Thank you so much. So first up, I'm going to call up our New York City controller, and we're gonna, in the spirit of this, we're gonna switch it out, advocates and elected officials. So first up, our controller.
I say public land, you say for public good. Yeah, public land.
Public good!
Public land.
Public good!
Public
good!
Investors intro 637 is gonna make it happen, y'all. Good afternoon. It is so great to be out here. I want to start by thanking our brilliant and dynamic housing chair, Purina Sanchez. We've got this amazing set of bills, sponsored by council members Bressler and Nurs and Brewer and Carlina Rivera, and also so great to be out here with Rita Joseph and Councilmember Alexa Aviles. We got an amazing set of advocates, and I want to see, are there any Mitchell-Lama residents in the house? Any folks from Community Land Trust in the house? Any folks from Community Development Corporation in the house? And St. Nick's. We got an amazing group of advocates, really from across the generations of affordable housing work in New York City. Look, you know what the housing crisis looks like. Every New Yorker knows it. After a brief dip at the beginning of the pandemic, asking rents for new units are $3,500 a month, and there's less than a 1% vacancy rate for units that rent at less than $1,500 a month. A third of New Yorkers pay more than half of their income for rent. More than 70,000 people will sleep in a homeless shelter tonight, including 20,000 kids. You saw that story in the New York Times a week back about the exodus of Black New Yorkers, nearly a 10% decline in the last 10 years, and so much of that young people, young families who are thinking, hey, maybe in a prior generation, I could see how I could become a homeowner in the city. Maybe I could get a Mitchell-Lama unit and raise my family here. Seeing no opportunity to do that, we're losing the energy and creativity and diversity that drives this city. And as controller, I'll tell you, I talked to a lot of business leaders as well, and they identify housing affordability as one of the key barriers to a growing economy. So the crisis has reached a pitch. And one thing that's good is a lot of folks are talking about it. So it's great that Albany has housing high on the list. We support, and I know one of the resolutions on the calendar today is to pass good cause eviction. Protected from unfair eviction. There's a resolution in support of the Housing Access Voucher Program. So the folks in shelters and at risk of homelessness have a path to getting a voucher that could support them. And as Chair Sanchez said, I'm enthusiastic about the work to make sure that we are building new housing supply at a wide range of incomes so that we confront the supply and demand issues that make challenges in our housing market. But let's be clear, new market rate housing development, even if distributed equitably, and even with tenant protections and some additional vouchers in place, it will not solve our affordability crisis. When you've got new units renting at $3,500 a month for people that can't even pay $1,500, you're not going to help folks in the neighborhoods facing eviction. The top 7 neighborhoods facing eviction in the Bronx, they're not going to be helped by new housing supply, and certainly not anytime soon. And look, how can we ask working class New Yorkers to support new housing development if they reasonably fear it's going to push them out of their neighborhoods, or that they don't ever see themselves having a chance to gain housing stability or build any equity in their homes? And that's where social housing comes in. You're going to hear a lot more about it, but social housing, maybe not everybody knows the term, but you know what it means because you've seen it in New York City. You know that Mitchell Lama housing at Co-op City in the Bronx or at Penn South in Manhattan was a haven for a generation of working class families in New York. You know that the work community development groups did to bring their neighborhoods back from the abandonment of the 1970s, whether it was Bed-Stuy Restoration Corporation or Los Sures or Harlem Congregations for Community Improvement, when the market was not supplying the housing or taking care of neighborhoods in the way that was needed. Social housing groups created Mitchell Lama Limited Equity Co-ops, created nonprofit-owned affordable rental housing, created supportive housing that supplied the kind of housing that New Yorkers truly need and that the speculative for-profit development market fails in so many ways to provide. And look, when I came on the scene as a young affordable houser, it was a different situation. It was about a third. So about a third of the city's land and subsidy went to for-profit private developers, but about a third of it went to nonprofit developers like these CDCs, and about a third of it went to tenants so they could convert their buildings into limited equity cooperatives. But through the Giuliani and Bloomberg and de Blasio administrations, that shifted to now where about 80% of our precious public land or 80% of our precious public subsidy dollars for affordable housing goes to for-profit private developers. And we're here today to say it's time to bring those models of social housing back in New York City. And I'm going to tell you, I got all right, let's hear it. I've got a little, just for 1 minute, a little like comptroller wonky here because, you know, social housing can function as what's called a public option in the marketplace. And you might think of that in universities or in healthcare, where you got private options that work for folks who can pay, but the public option not only provides for those folks who can't afford something in the market, it sets a tone, it sets a floor, it makes the whole marketplace function better. And today, about 10% of the housing in New York City is owned in various forms of social or public ownership. So let's set this goal, y'all. Let's double that, okay? Yeah! That's right. 20%. Not only would we provide affordable housing for hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers, not only could we recreate a 21st century model of that Mitchell Lama housing so that working class black and brown families would be able to become affordable cooperative homeowners and build generational stability, but we would create a more sane housing market overall. And that's really what we're standing here to do. The bills you're going to hear about today, and I won't go into them because you're going to hear from their sponsors, would create the platform for the next generation of social housing in New York, and by doing so, help us build a New York City where every family knows they can find a safe, decent, affordable place to live, where our communities are more collectively under our control, where we build a safe, stable, affordable, and democratic future for all our communities. Thanks y'all for being out here.
Social housing? Yeah! Social housing? Yeah! All right, moving right along, we're about to bring up a dynamic advocate from East Harlem, El Barrio. Athena! It's all right to clap for this dynamic
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon to my comrades, my supporters, and allies. My name is Athena Burnkoff. I'm the project director at the East Harlem Barrio Community Land Trust. Many of y'all may know that about 10 plus years ago, the Cooper Square Land Trust was a bit of a unicorn in New York City, a unicorn of affordable housing, of community ownership. And look at us now. Can you feel our energy? Can you feel our drive, our determination to be in collective ownership of our homes, our land, our businesses, our community centers, our gardens, our environmental spaces, our green spaces? All of it will be ours, not because we want to profit, because we know that we need it for our well-being, for our families, for our communities. We are here to build something. And there's not a single group here that will say, all right, I'm going to take care of my building and then let it rock and walk away. Everyone is here to build something, an ecosystem that's going to spread across all the city. And where all the boroughs are here, right? Yeah. And we're not stopping in New York City. We're going for the state. We're going beyond. We have a vision. The vision is clear. We want to clear the way to ownership that is meaningful, that is connected to actual community needs, that is tied to our well-being, that is tied to our need to stay where we want to stay in our communities and stay in our homes. And we're not going to stop until we get there. So Community Land Act is about building that infrastructure. It's about tending to the roots of an ecosystem that can endure the gentrification that is determined to push us all out. The exploitation that is determined to crush our spirits and our souls. But y'all can see there's no crushing happening. We are strong, we are determined, we are rooted, we are grounded, and we will persevere. And we're not at the beginning anymore. We've been in this for a while. But if you can imagine that 10 years, we're here building legislation that can build out this ecosystem, watch us in 10 more years.
Amazing, thank you so much. I also just want to acknowledge Councilmember Aviles and our public advocate, Jamani Williams, as well as Councilmember Barron. So next up, a champion for these issues, our public advocate, Jamani Williams.
Thank you to our chair, Councilman Comptroller. Thank you to the advocates and the organizations that are here. There's a problem when we monetize things that people need to the point that we're trying to make sure people make as much money as humanly possible regardless of what happens to human beings. And in healthcare, it means people die because they can't get the healthcare they need. And in housing, it means people die because they can't get the housing that they need. That's right. That ain't right. Last year, we've seen more homeless deaths than we ever have before. It has been decades and decades making sure that the corporate model of making as much money as humanly possible has brought us to this point. And as I'm sure it's been said, New York City now is currently the highest rental market in the entire country. I've seen some studies that suggest the world. That is abominable. The highest rental market. My office put out a report that showed that we have the most violations that we've ever had. So you're now paying the most for rent with the most violations. That's what our corporate model has provided right now. We cannot fix this problem while keeping the model the same. Period. You can try to tinker with it. You can try to move this little piece over here. No, it will always lead to where we are. So we have to change the model of how we deal with housing. That's what the Community Land Trust does. That's what social housing does. I'm still trying to find another name for social housing because I know it scares people. But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Housing for all.
Housing for all. Yes, let's call it housing for all. Let's do that. We have a resolution of thank you that's going to be heard that allow tenants to be able to purchase their buildings first. We have to take away the corporate model.
That's right.
We just have to. Because people are dying because of it. And we went from black folks being excluded explicitly from fair housing to now black, brown, working class folks being excluded because they simply can't afford it. They both have the same effect. So we're pleading with people in the powers that be, from City Hall to the governor's mansion. I know you take a lot of checks from real estate, but the price of those checks are people dying on the street. It is not worth it. So please, we're begging you. All these things are saying is let's get the housing that is needed for the people who need it the most. We can and we must. Peace and blessing. Level 19.
Social housing now! Social housing now! Social housing now!
All right.
When I say Copa, you say Topa, Copa.
Topa,
Copa,
Topa,
Copa,
Topa,
Copa,
Topa.
All right, we're gonna dance the whole way there. So next up, I wanna bring up Councilmember Ressler, who's a bill sponsor for Intro 637 regarding land.
York City is worse than ever. 600,000 families pay a majority of their income in rent. 600,000 families.
That ain't right!
In my district across the river in Brooklyn, over a quarter of tenants pay a majority of their income in rent every single month. But if you go up to the West Bronx, to Fiorina's district, you'll find a majority of tenants paying a majority of their income in rent every single month. It ain't right.
That ain't right!
If you want to live in Manhattan, and I don't know why you do, I'm sorry, Gail. But if you do, if you want to live in Manhattan, $5,000 for an apartment. I don't know who can afford it. This is the crisis we are facing. Black families are leaving Brooklyn for the first time since the Great Migration. We've lost 15,000 Latino residents in Williamsburg and Greenpoint over the last 15 years. We need to start building the affordable housing that people can actually afford.
That's right.
Yes. We welcome Governor Hochul trying to build 800,000 units of housing. We welcome Mayor Adams trying to build 500,000 units of housing. But housing for whom? We need housing for us. We need housing for working people. And that is what Intro 637 will do. This bill was originally sponsored by Brad Lander, and I want to give Brad a special shout out.